Hey dreamers, welcome to this week's live. I'm going to be talking about the theme of triumph this week. Hello Toffee. Say hello, turn around. Turn around. Look this way. Come on, you get cozy so I can start talking. So this is week 7 of Kiki's Big Dream Experiment. You gonna lie down? Come on. Yes, this is week 7 of Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, and my theme this week is triumph. The theme has come from the Major Arcana card, the Chariot. And I've been trying to think this week what triumph means to me. My cats are taking over today. Ozzy! I don't know if you can hear him in the background, but he's crying because he wants to go outside. He's an indoor cat, by the way. Yeah, look at you. Look how cozy you are. This always happens when I'm doing TikTok videos. Toffee will hear me talking and want to join in. So, yeah, triumph. Over the past couple of weeks when I've been doing my theme, I've been thinking, oh yeah, that's fine. I don't need to think about the theme too much. I know what it means. Like my first week was letting go, then seeking knowledge, then vivid dreams. Week 4 was desire. 5 was unexpected upheaval. Last week was addiction. And now I'm on triumph. And I was trying to think, what is it about triumph that is different from success or achievement or those other words? And so I did a bit of, I don't want to say research, because it's not like I was looking up, scientific papers on it, but just definitions and usage of the word triumph. What I took away from it was that, for me anyway, it comes down to a story, that there's some challenge, emotion. There's an emotional arc to it, I suppose. There's some challenge, there's action taken, and then eventually, over time, there will eventually be a success. And the thing that I was thinking about yesterday was how the level or the depth of the triumph relates to how challenging the challenge was, as opposed to how much effort you put into the action. And I was trying to think, there was a particular story I had in mind yesterday about it, and I think whatever the story was, I don't actually remember the story, but there was a big challenge, and then the action to overcome it was actually pretty small, but the sense of triumph at the end was still pretty big because it was a big challenge that was overcome. And so I wanted to try and think about that a bit more. What about when there's small challenges and you do end up spending a lot of time and energy tackling them? Is the sense of triumph big or small? And I don't know. I guess it depends. If it's a small challenge, why does it take so much time and energy? Is it because it's a small challenge on paper? But for me, it's a big challenge. This is what I'm trying to figure out. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, your questions. Hmm. And so each week in Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, I do some kind of content essentially every day. I don't do anything on Saturdays, that's my day off. And I still do my daily TikTok videos to keep my streak up. But on Mondays, I release a podcast. On Tuesdays, I write an article on LinkedIn. On Wednesdays, I stream games on Twitch. On Thursday, I write an article on Substack. On Friday, I write and publish poetry on Instagram. Saturday is my day off. And then Sunday, I write a blog post on my website to look back at the week, reflect on everything, and identify lessons that I've learned. And then plan for my next week. And so what I found in the past few weeks is because I am creating in different formats, that I'm thinking about the theme in a different way through each one. And so I wanted to do the podcast first on Mondays because I wanted it to be sort of an exploration of the theme a little bit, and to try and tie it back to stories in my life. And to kind of use that to what's the word? Sort of to prime my mind a little bit. And that has been helpful in the past weeks. I was trying to think this week, I suppose I don't think about Triumph all that often because I feel like I have been holding it in a special place for big achievements and not small ones. And maybe that's why I don't think about it so much. But I think it is good to recognize the small achievements as well. And I think the way to turn it into triumph is to tell the story. I think that's where my problem has been so far with the small things, is that I don't really have the story, and so I don't have all the pieces to put it together as triumph. It's an interesting one, because I think if I had the story, then I would have sort of more evidence for myself that I can do things. When I was working in my previous job, I did so many things. I fulfilled so many roles as well. And it got to a point where when I was leaving that I felt I had pigeonholed myself so much because of that. That like I had a very specialist role in the team, and it was hard to kind of step back from that and see what were the component parts of it. And I think this theme of triumph will help me to overcome that a little bit. Because what I found was when I went then to apply for new jobs, I was getting pigeonholed into a particular area and I didn't want to do exactly the same thing anymore. I wanted to do something adjacent to, but different. And so one of the things that I had done over the past few months is I was looking at my work experience, my skills, my experience, and trying to break it down a different way. So rather than focusing on like, what did I achieve, to write down like, what did I do? Like what brought me on the journey to get the achievement, we'll say. Hello again. Getting cozy. Yeah. And to think about my skills in a different way, because when I started talking about my role in the company, it pigeonholed me. But when I stepped back a little bit and talked about the things that I did, the role that I played personally, it freed me up a lot because it didn't pigeonhole my thoughts. And I could see that there were certain things in there, certain skills and experience that I could apply to other areas of life and that I could draw on as support. Because, like, when I think about my the project I did for my master's degree, it was I used a lot of my software development skills and coding skills in that, and ended up using some of that back in the workplace. And so, that was entirely just something new I had brought in because I'd done it in my academic work. You know what, actually? I think because in the workplace, I always counted like my wins along with everyone else's wins. That if I had a win, then it was a team win. And that is healthy and important because I wasn't just working on my own, I was working with a team of people. But I think the downside was that I had kind of forgotten to take credit for my part in that as well, if that makes sense. Because I could see everyone else's impact and contribution, but I was letting go of my own. So I think the storytelling aspect will be really useful because I tell stories about, well, we all tell stories about ourselves and other people. And I have been telling new stories about myself to try and get myself to do things that are difficult. Like, I wouldn't have thought months ago that I would be doing a podcast, articles online, writing poetry and publishing it, streaming video games. So I set up the structure for Kiki's Big Dream Experiment this way so that I could do those things because I knew once I had the starting pieces, I could then eventually fill in the blanks later. And the blanks are just my experience as it relates to the theme and that type of content. So when I write on LinkedIn, I write about the theme as it shows up in the workplace and how it pertains to my experience, how it pertains to how I work with people and lead teams. And if I was just to write about that stuff without a theme, I'd find it really difficult because there's no like sense of direction to it. And that's why I like doing a weekly theme because there is a direction to go about it. Because there's a million different things I would want to write about on LinkedIn. But I don't know what's the overall story that I'm trying to tell. Whereas because I have this structure with Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, there's a story there being built as I go through it. Hello, what's up? You gonna go for a walk? Hmm? What's up? Oh, you just want head rubs. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the story. So that's the good thing about doing these weekly themes is because over the 90 days that I'm doing Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, I'm forming a story and I'm week 7. I'm in week 7 now out of 12. So, I'm that much way through it. And I was thinking on Sunday, I've passed the halfway mark now. I've got week 6 done. I've had day 45, and part of me feels like, oh, I should be like at the peak now. But that's not necessarily how stories work. And also, I won't know what the peak is until it's finished. But I think there's just this little sense of, oh, you're halfway through, you're at the top of the mountain, and now you have to come back down. And that's like an automatic response I have. Because I suppose it's a structure that's easy to think about, you know? You're halfway through, so it's like the first half is getting up the mountain, the second half is coming down the mountain. But it's more like, I don't know, maybe sailing the sea, I guess. Because some weeks you'll go really fast because you're with the current, and other weeks you'll go slower because you're going against it, or there's storms, or whatever it might be. But you know that you'll get there in the end. And I think that's actually, yeah, that's what I need to find is like, what's the metaphor for the journey? Because the mountain one doesn't really work, I don't think. Because you don't know when you're at the peak. And like, if the peak is the destination, then that means that I wouldn't get there until the 90 days is up. So my whole mountain metaphor doesn't work for the halfway point. Hmm. And so tying it back to triumph, what I've noticed so far is that there's been a lot of little triumphs with the experience so far. I had set out a goal to do 9 pieces of content each week. So I've got podcast, article on LinkedIn, TikTok Live, streaming on Twitch, a Pinterest board, Substack article, poetry on Instagram, my weekly reflection. And I did have a ninth that I wanted to do, and I got stuck on week 1 because I realized what I wanted to do isn't something I would have been able to do. What I wanted to do originally was I wanted to do YouTube lives that were like a co-working space where I would, you know, go on live for like an hour and a half and set up a Pomodoro timer and use that time to like work on a project of mine. But do it live so that people could join and be like, oh, this is focus time. I can do some work myself. But in order to go live on YouTube, you need 50 subscribers, and I didn't know that at the time. And so I didn't have that ninth one. And over the weeks, I've been trying to think, what is my ninth one? Because I do want to have a ninth one, and I will fill it in retrospectively. And this is another part of the structure. Like, I don't want to be confined to, if I don't get something done within the week, then I've missed it. You know, that's not a nice feeling. Because in my first week of Kiki's Big Dream Experiment, I was on holidays. I came back from holidays, and then I went to a concert in Manchester. And so there was a lot more going on, and it was difficult to try and get 8 pieces of content done, particularly the things where I was going to be on video live like this and Twitch. And so I said to myself, you know, like, what's important is that I get them done for the theme. The timing of them is not necessarily important, because whether I do it in week 1 or week 2, it's still a TikTok live talking about the theme of letting go, like I had in week 1. And so in week two, I doubled up on some of my videos and content. And, I now have them done. And they weren't necessarily in their component weeks, but they they got done. I've ticked them off. I'm not worrying about them. And, you know, they happened like a couple of days after they should have. But all of it is in the past now, so it doesn't really matter because when you look at my YouTube page to see the extra streams, it's only if you look at the date and like retrospectively go back and look at like where this happened that you'll notice that it's not like within the first week. And yeah, people could probably point that out, but like I know myself that it wasn't in the first week and it doesn't really matter because I set my goal up to be to create the pieces of content with the theme, not to do it within that week. And that's a big part of Kiki's big dream experiment is that there's going to be weeks where lots happens and there's going to be weeks where not a lot happens. And at the core of it, I want the pieces of content to be the grounding part of the week, I suppose. And then everything else after that is bonus. And so marking them complete means I did my work for that week. Even if it means that I did it later because, I had more time in week two to spend on it. Now, the thing is that I won't ever be going ahead of myself because I won't know my next week theme until Sunday. So that kind of keeps a barrier there where I will, like, once I finish the base level work, I'll pick something else to work on, a side project or whatever. There's lots of other things that I've got. But what I've been noticing is that it's just really helpful to kind of see the flow of my work over time. And because I've set expectations on what the reward is and what the triumph is, then I've noticed that like my time over the past number of weeks has felt like I'm using it properly. I'm doing the things I say I'm doing, but I'm also learning more from it than I originally anticipated because I set out a container for my time and I'm just filling those pieces in. But because every week is a little bit different, I'm learning something new about it. Now, when it comes to the ninth piece of content, I still want to do that. And what I had said to myself was, look, at the end of the day, if I get to the end of 12 weeks and I have 108 pieces of content done, 12 times 9, then that's that's the same success as if I had done the 9 pieces week by week. Because the end result is still the same. And during the week last week, I've been reading a lot more lately because I used to read a lot and then didn't because I couldn't find the time. And now I've made the time to include it as part of my day or my week. And one of the things I started reading was The Artist's Way. And I didn't know that it was laid out like a 12-week course, basically. And so, it just stood out to me as like, it's a 12-week course. There's 12 weekly things you do. It feels like that's the answer to my ninth piece of content. So, I've been looking at the first week of it so far. And what I'm trying to figure out is how do I want to take the work from that and like create something with it. I was thinking to do a YouTube video, but I don't know quite what that will look like yet. I was also thinking I could post things on like a Notion dashboard or something where I explain like what I'm learning or what I'm doing through the creative process. But then when I got into it and was looking at some of the things, I was like, oh, there's a lot of really personal stuff in here that I wouldn't necessarily want other people to see. Um, so I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that piece out. But I do want to do something related to it because honestly, the structure I laid out for myself for Kiki's Big Dream Experiment is 90-day program, 12 weeks, structure to do something each week with the intention that it is focused towards my goals. You know, because one of my goals is I want to stream video games. And so I want to do it in this container so that I can see what does it feel like? How do I get on with it? Do I enjoy it? Because I don't want to go and like buy a big fancy camera and then not use it. You know, use what I have at the moment, see how I get on, and then if it's something I want to keep on, I can do that after the 12 weeks is over. And I've been finding this already. There are certain pieces of my content during the week that I enjoy working on, and there's other ones that I kind of feel like isn't worth my time. But I'm still doing them because I've committed to doing it, and part of the experience is I knew that I would be capable of doing those 9 things in a week. And so even when I approach the ones that I don't really want to do, I'm still like, look, it's fine. I'll get it done and I'll have something better to look forward to tomorrow. To be honest, the only one that falls into that category is Pinterest because I've never I never used Pinterest before. The vision I had for it, I don't think really aligns to the purpose of Pinterest. And I don't know anyone who uses Pinterest anymore. So it just feels like it doesn't go anywhere. But, you know, 1 out of 9 is not bad. I found good purpose in the other content that I make. And what's interesting is I've been finding that when I go back to my own stuff and read my own writing, that I'm learning from it again. It's like reinforcing the lesson, you know, because I don't spend hours and days like crafting the perfect post. I set it up in such a way that I make the content on the day I release it because I don't want it hanging over me. Because I know that if it is hanging over me, I'll go back and forth and yeah, it'll never be perfect. So my new definition of perfect is that I will create it on the day and let it go. You know, I've got the story in that article or video or whatever, and that's it. And then over time, like I get better at the storytelling and the point that I'm making and everything like that. But I can always go back and look at the old stuff that I was writing and see, you know, is there a lesson in there that I've kind of forgotten about? Because the thing about it is when you're doing so much and you're constantly growing and evolving, you start to forget who you used to be. Like when things were difficult. Like I started doing TikTok videos in June properly. Like I started doing one a day, doing a 30-day challenge that I set for myself to like do a video every day that's a minute long and talk about something. And that was hard. That was really hard to do a minute video because I kept worrying about what I was saying, how I was saying it, how I was coming across, what I was sharing. Would people like it? Would people not like it? And over time, I realized it doesn't matter what other people think, because what I'm getting from doing it is I'm getting more confidence talking on camera. I'm getting more confidence talking about my ideas and how they connect together. And I'm also building a skill of editing videos as well, and seeing like what level of editing is required for certain things. So I don't do a lot of editing in my videos because it's time consuming and I can get lost in it and be like, I don't like the way that sounded. But instead, I've gone with this thing of that's the way it sounds. It's fine. This is how I would sound in a conversation in real life. So, you know, get over it a little bit. Um, yeah, and like one of those things is me saying a lot when I could just be quiet. I think part of me uses the because I want to punctuate the silence with something to show that I'm still talking and that I haven't finished the thought. Maybe that's it. But when I'm on my own videos, no one's interrupting me. But I do have a lot of silence if I don't fill it with something, and that is uncomfortable. I feel it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's fine. Like even right now, taking breaks in between sentences, trying to figure out what to say. But my point was with the hey Pete, how are you? My point was with the content that as I'm doing it each week, every day, I'm learning something in putting it together because I'm like figuring out a story. But then I'm moving on to the next week and the next theme and everything. But when I go back to, let's say, the article I wrote in week one on LinkedIn, then I'm transported back to how I felt at that time as well. So I've got a new perspective on the lesson that I've learned, the lesson that I've shared. And that's another powerful thing as well. I've noticed it as well on TikTok, looking back at my old videos, just seeing how uncomfortable I felt because I remember the feeling of doing those videos. But I don't remember the content of what's inside them. So when I'm listening to that, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is what I was thinking back then. And that's really interesting because it helps with, bringing back ideas that I had forgotten about in some way. And that itself is a triumph, really. These are all little triumphs I've noticed over the past couple of months. Hey, Jenny, how are you? And you know what it is about them? I think because they're all so new and they're all things that I've been doing on my own, that they stand out a little more. Because I'm not looking at this teamwork element, which hides my personal contribution a little bit. And so because I'm seeing the fruits of my own work so directly, it's a bit easier to tell the story. Uh, so yeah, I think that's how Triumph is showing up at the moment for me because I've got the full story. Hey, Denny, what's up? Um, oh yeah, so the Triumph thing. Yeah, I've got the full story now. Well, it feels like the full story in that I had the challenge, like, you know, not being confident on camera. So I did my 30-day video challenge. Then set up another challenge after that and so on. And I've moved on from those points. But now when I look back at the videos, I can see how much progress there was. And so now I'm getting that sense of triumph by actually seeing like the old story and where I am now. And that's something great I found from doing my content. Didn't you just check in your message now? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, do you want to join? Hey there.
How are you going, Kiki?
Good. How are you?
Hope you're keeping well. I'm not too bad now. The young lad was home there at the weekend, and I asked him a few questions. And look, I think he didn't like a few things.
Yeah.
I said to him, "You're gay," and he said, "I'm not gay. Don't call me gay."
Mhm.
And look, I didn't know what to say then. I said, What are you?" And he couldn't tell me what he was.
Mhm. Okay.
And so I still think it's very fresh.
Yeah.
It's quite raw. And I don't think he knows how to talk about it himself.
Mhm.
So it's not only me. It's just, I don't know if you have a bit of advice maybe that I could relate to him. Maybe.
Yeah. Um, okay. Sorry to hear that it didn't maybe go as well as you had hoped. During the week myself, I realized that there was a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about with people because I didn't know how to. And I realized it's something I have been doing for years because I then worry about like the questions they ask me and I don't have answers to them. And literally, it's only been in the last 3 or 4 days that I had this realization. Um, so the timing is good that I can share this with you. Um,
Well, that's something.
what I found was that you don't need to put labels on things straight away, and that talking about it is helpful just to orient yourself, because at the end of the day, the label isn't really the important thing. What you want is a good relationship with your son and for him to be happy and that kind of thing. And so the label itself, yes, it does help explain things, but if he's in a place where he doesn't really know how to talk about it yet, then trying to find a label isn't going to be maybe the best use of time. Um, but I
I
don't think
get you.
this is something that he knows either, because for me, it's only a lesson I learned last week, and um, like I've been out for 14 years. So what I would say maybe is um, ask talk to him about like ask him about his experience so far. Ask him what he would like, how would he like to talk about it? You know, what are his maybe worries and fears? Because I think that might be a big part of it, where it's a very vulnerable thing to do, to share this stuff, and sometimes the worries and fears about how it will be received can hold you back from it. And I think this goes both ways. You know, you've talked about worrying about saying the right thing. Um, so you can say that to him, that you're worried about saying the wrong thing and it causing a problem.
Now, I did when I it wasn't that I was calling them names, but
Mhm.
I I called him gay,
Yeah.
and he didn't like that. And I said, "Well, what do you want to be known as? Do you want me to call you the boy guy?
Yeah.
What? Tell me what you want me to do." And he got very upset. I got upset, and again, it ended in tears. And look, I really appreciate you letting me come on here, and your advice is brilliant, and I really do appreciate that. And I just, what do you? I don't mean label, but what do you class yourself, or what would your? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to offend you.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I largely I say bi, as in bisexual. Um, I've been using the word queer a lot lately because I've kind of been talking a bit more generally about stuff when I refer to my sexuality in the way that I was telling stories. So I've been using the word queer a lot lately as well. I think because like bi is my own label, but queer is like the experience a little bit. It's kind of hard to explain, but those are the two words that I use.
Right, right.
Um, but I've had to do a lot of searching to find which words to use when, you know, because in my early years, I didn't want to give labels to people to use because I kind of felt like if I said the label, then I was stuck with that one, and if I changed it later, I'd have to go and correct people, and I didn't want to do that. Um, and so when I got in a relationship, it became easier because then I didn't have to give a label. I just said, "This is my partner. You know, his name is whatever," and then they could make up their own assumptions after that, which didn't matter too much to me.
Very good. And another word that's thrown about the place, I suppose it's a label or whatever you want to call it, but I do hear a lot, of my generation, and maybe to be to label a lad a faggot.
Yeah, yeah,
That's totally unacceptable, I take it.
yeah. That one is that one definitely is a no no. It's like the gay equivalent of the N word, basically.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for coming on here now. I don't mean to offend you. I'm just here to learn, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry if
I
I
get
caused.
that. No, that like I get that. I understand that, and I know that the way that you're using it is not in a derogatory sense. Um,
Exactly, exactly.
and yeah, it is one of those
Oh
words that
no.
people do take can take a lot of offense to. Um, so yeah, I'm glad that you asked the question though, because you know you can ask me those awkward questions for sure. Um, have you any other questions for me?
Sorry, I was just reading their demo. I do go on. Demo is teaching me a lot about the TikTok as well,
Okay.
and he's guiding me through the process of making videos and all the rest of it. I'm sorry, I just there was a few other things there. Look, I I think it's still very raw
Hmm.
with my son, and it's very raw with me. So every bit of advice helps, and you know, just trying to grow with it and go with it, I suppose.
Hmm.
It's a learning experience for all.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's gonna be it's gonna be difficult. There's gonna be those hard conversations. And I think that's why it's important to take a step back a little bit and not necessarily talk about the topic directly with looking at labels and things like that. When things are a bit heated, because when they're heated, the slightest wrong word can have a big effect. Um, yeah, it is definitely a tough one to deal with.
Now, as I've said to you before, he's after coming out as bi,
Yeah.
and up to now he always had a girlfriend,
Hmm.
and now he's not gone away from that, but he's courting a man. Do you think I should offer him to bring his partner around and meet him? Maybe that would break the ice with all.
Yeah. If he's open, if you're, it sounds like you're definitely open to that. If he's open to doing that as well, that could be a really nice way of breaking the ice because what I found for myself is when I brought my boyfriend around to the house, um, everyone just felt a lot more chill because they were like, "Oh, it's just the same as a girlfriend. It's a boy." you know, a lot of the I think anxieties that people had in my family kind of disappeared that way, and it does change the atmosphere a little bit in the right direction. Um, yeah, if you're open to that, that sounds like a good idea to share with your son and see what his thoughts are about it.
I think maybe I'm going to try and make that happen now, maybe before Christmas, and try and just, it's he's we're all just it's hard because I never went through this, and I only have the young lad there, and
Mhm.
it's just it's great that you allowed me on here to talk because I wouldn't have any friends now that have gone through. Not well. I don't mean that in a bad way now, but experienced this.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And the other thing I'm just thinking of is depending on where the boyfriend is at, he'll have his own experience and journey as well. So if he has been out for a while, then he'll be another experienced person to help with that too.
Well, I really do appreciate all your advice, and I'm going to head off now because I have a few bits to do. I have to go into town, and but I've taken your advice on board there, Kiki, and if I might be on again. I'll see how things go. I do appreciate you letting me on there to talk because you give your own experience, speak from your own experiences, and I appreciate that. Fair play to you.
Great. Thanks, Denny. Hope you get on well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kiki. Take care. Bye
Cheers.
bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Damo, for the gifts. I didn't want to interrupt my conversation with Denny, but thank you so much. Pete, I see your comments as well. Are you still here? Hey, Pete. Thanks, Denny. You know, it's funny. I didn't really expect to um, be talking so much about the queer experience and queer community on, well, in any of my work, really. Um, I think because I kind of dealt with it so long ago that it's just a normal part of my life, so I don't really see how it impacts things. It doesn't come into my experience that I'm sharing um, too much, but like I'll bring it up in conversation as it relates to the topic, and it just to me it just feels normal at this stage. Um, so yeah, I guess I don't know. I didn't really expect that it would be something so helpful to talk about. Hey, Beat, I saw your message saying you were unsure with your brother. On that, Pete, it is really difficult because you've got to change your whole world really, and I don't think an awful lot of people talk about the other side where family and friends of someone who's transitioning have to like reconfigure their life that way, and it does take time. Like I've got friends who have transitioned, and I found it difficult to continue to use their preferred names and pronouns. But what I wasn't expecting, or what I wasn't like prepared for, was that I was correcting then family members and other people who knew this person, and I had to like explain that to them. That was difficult. Telling explaining to my mom that a friend she knew for years is now going by a different name, and like my mom has a lot of questions about like that, these kind of questions that we're talking about here. And it's difficult because you kind of you need to understand it for yourself so that you can accept it and move forward, because it's a big difference, really. It shouldn't be, but it's the world that we're in at the moment, and it kind of is a big difference. Are there any particular things that you're struggling with? One thing that I would say is to not beat yourself up too much when you make a mistake, but to try and correct it when you notice it. And if you don't notice it and it's being called out, I suppose so much of your behavior is automatic, you know, that's just a human thing. We become automatic. We're creatures of habit. When we do something repeatedly, it becomes automatic, and so it's very hard to change those patterns. And so we can, slip up and use the wrong pronoun or the wrong name here and there, and it for us it might feel like a small thing. For the person who's transitioning, it can feel like a big thing. So if they do get upset over a name slip or something like that, um, let them be. You know, they've been on a journey a lot longer than uh, you're aware of. You're only aware of it when they tell you, but their journey has been going on much longer, and the experience is quite different. Treat yourself with kindness that you are getting better at it and that you want to get better at it. And it will take time and it will be difficult. And there will be times when, things get heated or people are getting upset. And I don't want to say that there won't be those times, because it's better to know that there will be, but that you'll be able to get over them as well. It's definitely a tough one. I'm thinking back to my theme of triumph for this week, and I've talked a lot about how I feel a sense of accomplishment and such from looking back at my old content and seeing how much I've grown from it in the time, but also recognizing that at the time I was doing great things and the stuff that I was talking about was really important to me, and I was learning lessons back then that now feel like small lessons, but they were the first steps in my journey. And there's a sense of triumph there where those early steps where I didn't really know where it was going have now led to here. And if I didn't trust myself enough to do it back then, I wouldn't be here now. And so that's evidence to myself that the decisions I make will work themselves out. The things I try will work themselves out. And the hard times will eventually be overcome with more positive times. And it's something I've struggled with over the years, is recognizing that achievement and triumph, because once I do something once and I repeat it later, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I know how to do it. It's fine. Um, but I'm dismissing all of those times, all of those repetitions that are still effort and everything. But it's because I know I can do it that it doesn't feel as triumphant when I do it. It can feel not as accomplishing, because you know I end up spending more energy like worrying about it, putting it off because it's not important or whatever. And maybe that's part of the story I need to tell myself, that things will be difficult and make the previously easy things difficult to do now, which is why they take more energy to accomplish. And so it's a slightly different story. The story is recognizing that and changing things up. trying to do it a different way that makes it easier now because life is different. So why would I expect that doing chores and admin work and stuff the same way I did it 10 years ago? Why do I assume that that's going to be the best way of doing it when so much else in life is different? Something for me to think about during the week. And in these conversations that I've been having with people, particularly around LGBTQ stuff, I used to do a lot of this in the workplace with my company on a volunteer basis with the like an employee group. And I loved it because people wanted to learn and they wanted to understand perspectives and positions and everything. And to see that, oh, it's fairly normal. All of the stuff that you hear in media and whatever can be scaremongering. Like when I think back to the marriage referendum in Ireland back in 2015, I think it was, so much of the no side was like, oh, it's, you know, we can't have marriage equality because it's going to be awful for children and all these things. And it's all scaremongering. You see it in the US all the time now about trying to revoke marriage equality because, it damages marriage, which is ludicrous because the people who are complaining about that are divorced. And it's like, what's your point here? Ruining the sanctity of marriage and you've been divorced 4 times? Doesn't make sense, does it? But it's perception and it's the story that you tell yourself. You then find evidence to support it in some way. I heard one lately about um, a gay couple in a group of friends, and people were like, "Huh, haven't seen a gay couple in real life before." And then the relationship didn't work out in the end, and everyone else was like, "Yeah, it's because they were gay." No, it's not because they were gay. Straight people break up all of the time. You don't know what was going on in the background. It's your perception that has said, "Oh, they're gay, they won't make it," and now they've broken up, and you've proven yourself right. And so now every gay relationship won't make it. But what about Sally over there who's cheating on her husband? Or, you know, Tim who's doing the same and has a different family, a hidden family, and 4 kids with a different woman? Oh, but they're outliers. That doesn't mean my marriage is going to break down. Exactly the point. You can't use one gay couple to judge your entire view of gay relationships. I have been wondering if there is something I could do in this space. I'll have to have a think about that. There might be some stuff in there that I could be triumphant with. Who knows? But it's definitely given me some food for thought. Anyway, I'm going to finish up this live, and I shall see you all next week for whatever the theme is for week 8. Thanks for joining me today. Keep dreaming.